Welcome to Tranny Sunday. I'm Joe, and I'm the dad.
And I'm Raya, and I'm the daughter.
Hey, did you know that there was a break-in last night at the police station?
A break-in? No.
Yeah, somebody broke in and stole all the urinals.
They stole the urinals in the police station.
Yep, the police say they've got nothing to go on. When we first started our podcast over 3 years ago, we did our very first in-person presentation at an LGBTQ plus event. We had the idea of setting up a booth and we were going to interview people for the podcast. I remember the two people that came up, an older couple, that had a very big concern. I don't know if it was their son or daughter, but their adult child left and cut off complete communication with them. They don't have any way to contact this person. They don't know where they went. They don't know if they're in state or out of state. Some people implied that this person may have gone to the West Coast. They really didn't know. They tried phone calls and the phone was no longer in service. The person had gotten a different cell phone. So they came to us because the event coordinator suggested that they go over and talk to us as the podcast people. Well, at that point, they said they don't know why they left and why they cut off communication. They didn't do anything wrong. They were just trying to be supportive. And what advice did we have for them? I was pretty new at this. We really didn't have any great advice. Well, in the 3 years and now in our 4th year that we have been doing this, we have learned a lot and we still have a lot to learn. But I realize now that if that would have happened today, I think I would have had some different answers. And I'd like to share some of those thoughts and ideas here with you.
And since then, we've done a lot of additional programs and been in groups or led conversations and been in conversation with a lot of different people, allies, parents, family members, friends that are ancillary to the LGBTQ plus community. And we've also talked to a lot of people in our own community, in the LGBT plus community, that have talked about their perspective from the other side. We've seen this a lot more frequently. And I would say that in any group that I'm in, an average group with about 20 or so people, at least one of them will be a parent that has an issue similar to this. Maybe they have an adult child that is talking to them a lot less or doesn't really want to come around like they did before, doesn't want to have open conversation, has said, I'm cutting you off, some aspect of that. We see this again and again. So we want to start this podcast by talking first about those two different perspectives. First, what does it feel like to be the parent? And then we'll come back and talk about what does it feel like to be that LGBTQ child, adult child, and just helping one another understand the perspectives to begin with. And then we'll come back and talk about some ideas and some tips for making things work. So first, let's talk about the parents. What does it feel like when you are the parent not knowing what you did?
That has to be difficult. When that happens, you know there must be something, because it isn't just the idea that somebody's just going to pick up and walk off for no reason at all. There's clearly a reason, but when you don't know what it is, I can understand how frustrating it could be. So maybe you could start by asking yourself or your spouse, if that's the situation, but asking each other, what do we wish we could tell them if we could communicate with them now? Or what do we wish we would have said earlier? Some kind of thought you would have that would kind of put a perspective on it that what would the encounter look like now? And another thing, you might ask each other, or thinking back, and it's easy to answer this right away by nothing. When somebody says, where do you think you could have possibly gone wrong? Well, I don't know. There's nothing. I would suggest you just focus on that for a little bit. Could there be anything at all, no matter how subtle, that you didn't think was anything, that they might think is a big thing? I notice I have had that situation. I've done things that I realize if I would have known what I know now after 3.5 years of podcasting, I probably wouldn't have said some of the things I said. I probably wouldn't have done some of the things I said. I probably wouldn't have set some of the examples that I set, such as telling jokes that are inappropriate, those kinds of things. Now, I did all those things before I even realized that my own daughter was part of the community that I could make fun of, thinking that she could easily join in. And probably did.
Indeed, yes.
Yes.
Mhm.
Yes, because you were playing the role of male.
Right.
But you were playing the role. I didn't know that.
And I didn't even think of it so much at the time as being something that you did, because to me that was just the culture that I grew up in, and that's how things were. But looking back on it, I'm sure there were a lot of things where it would have been a lot easier had we not had that culture.
Correct.
As a family, or in our relationship. When we talk to these parents, we see that over and over again, is that they remember the sacrifices that they made. We'll hear things like, but I just love them so much. I did the best that I could do for them. We'll hear them say things like, I gave everything for them. I sacrificed so much. You think about how this is. We always remember when we sacrifice, particularly when we're sacrificing in a circumstance that somebody else doesn't care much about. And we all know that experience on the other side too, where somebody has sacrificed and we don't think about it that much because it didn't matter that much to us. Dad, I remember a time where you and I went out on a business trip. And we went out to breakfast with someone, and that person navigated it so that you would pick up the bill.
Yes.
And you were very frustrated about it. And you remembered it for a long time after that. You figured this guy was just out to get me. And that guy never thought probably twice about it at all. But you remembered that sacrifice.
I did.
And so there's just one little micro example. Now, take that and expand that out to a wider relationship. You remembered that a lot. He remembered that not at all. He maybe doesn't even remember eating with us. And yet you remember not only that breakfast, but how frustrated you were.
But part of the reason that I was remembering it so clearly is that it happened to be a time when we were really struggling in our business and we didn't have the money. And that made it more difficult.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think that's so much what happens from the parent's perspective. I gave. I sacrificed to raise my child. I wanted to do this or that, but I couldn't because I was a parent with responsibilities. And this time when I really wanted to do such and such, or we wanted to use our money for something, but an opportunity came up for my child and we sacrificed so that we could send them on the school trip or whatever they were doing.
Sure.
We as parents remember how much we sacrificed. And we think, why don't they understand? Why don't they remember? It's easy to get lost in that.
Let's take a look at the other side. What about the LGBTQ plus person? what do you see in that particular perspective? They have already said, or they have done by example, that they are cutting off communication with you, or they've moved away. They've done something that has made them estranged from you. Let's take a look at why that may be.
I now know people on this side as well. And we've done some interviews. We've got one coming up in a few weeks with a non-binary guest who was talking about their frustrations with parents, again, with a parent that feels like they've done a pretty good job. But when we hear the other side, I think you'll understand a bit more of why not. I hear this again and again and again. I have a very close friend who had to break off ties with their mom and dad, particularly their mom. And this was 3 years ago. And after 3 years, they're still exceptionally hurt. When it came around to the anniversary of the time when they actually had to cut ties, they said, "This is a really difficult time for me right now because I'm still so hurt." I am sure that their parent right now, or parents, feel like, well, if that hurts you so much, why not come back? Why not reconcile? And my friend says, because it hurts more to be in a relationship. I have tried that already. I've tried it, and then I tried it again, and then I tried it again, and then I tried it again. And I keep getting hurt over and over, and I'm done getting hurt. What we hear from these stories over and over again are stories of trauma, of real pain, of feeling shame and guilt and fear, and feeling like this was my only recourse. I tried everything else that I knew to do, and none of it worked. And what we hear over and over again is, no child does this lightly. They have really thought long and hard about it, and almost always they feel like they have tried multiple times to communicate what the issue is, what the real issue is, and they have been dismissed.
I think every person, every parent needs to understand that. No one is going to, for no reason at all, cut off communication or leave or even just start making things cold. There is something behind it. So you have to assume that they've done this for no reason at all is the wrong answer.
Right. So at the very least, you start by saying there must be some reason here. We don't start with, but I did everything right.
Right.
But
exactly.
How could they possibly think that I would not be supportive? How could they possibly think that I would not? No, we start with, okay, well, something must have made you feel this way. What was it? What did I do? What could I have done to be more supportive? What could I have done to be more? Make it safer. What we can tell you is from that child's perspective, we see it again and again. Many LGBTQ plus adults experience negative interactions, lack of solidarity, or even outright rejection when parents disapprove or even just give mild comments about their gender identity or their sexuality. And the parent thinks, oh, I just made a little joke, or I didn't even think much about it, or I didn't even know that I said anything wrong. And the child says, or especially the adult child says, this really, really hurts. The other thing that we hear frequently is, I wanted to do this earlier, but I couldn't because I was dependent on my parents at that time. Maybe I was still a minor. I was still in the household. I was stuck there. But now I'm no longer stuck. And this hurts too much to keep it going now that I don't have to.
I can imagine if I was young and living at home with my parents, and because they're all right-handed, every time I did something different, they would say, oh, well, yeah, I guess you better sit there because you're left-handed, and made something out of that each time. Ultimately, I would feel as though I was clearly a minority, but not a minority of the high type, but more of the low type. And they think it's cute. They think it's funny. And they might say, oh, here, I guess I better hand it to you over this hand.
Anytime that I have used any special devices that were designed for left-handers, I get a little insight into what your perspective must be like. I use a left-handed scissors and I think, how do you cut with these things?
Yeah.
And then I remember you're using right-handed scissors most of the time. Those things are invisible to me.
Yes, and we learn to, some people do learn to use it with their right hand. I use it with my right hand, but then when I'm cutting, I move the paper. I don't move the scissors, I move the paper.
Oh,
So,
sure. Yeah, that makes sense. So you're still essentially cutting with your left hand. You're doing the work with your left hand.
Exactly.
That makes sense. And so it's the exact same thing here, is that those things are generally invisible when they don't affect you. But when they do affect you, you think, I wish you could see things from my perspective. And that is the thing that your adult LGBTQ plus child wants you to understand. We are going to talk about next, what can we do to figure out why these happen and what can we do to help to make things right after this.
I'm Monica Scarbin. I love listening to the Transcendent podcasts, probably because I've been a guest speaker. I've been listening to these podcasts for over 2 years now and have found them to be not only inspirational, but very informative and emotionally lifting to my spirits, especially when I'm not feeling very hot. I'm a supporter, and I'm glad to be a supporter. Please go to transcendent.com, click on support. By as little as $3 a month, you can cancel at any time.
I was in a group of about 20 of us sitting around talking about racial issues. And a friend of mine, a black woman, said in a very vulnerable moment, this was difficult for her because most of us in the circle were white. And she said, well-meaning white people that have not done the work to figure out how to be anti-racist are more dangerous to me than outright racists.
Interesting.
One of the white women in the circle raised her hand and she said, I don't understand. How could those of us that are well-meaning people that don't believe in racism and don't want to hurt you, why can we possibly be worse than an outright racist? And my friend said, because when I'm around a racist person, I know to keep my guard up. But when I'm around a well-meaning white person, I think I'm safe. And all of a sudden they say something that is incredibly hurtful. And I think, why didn't I keep my guard up around this person?
That's interesting.
When we're talking about estrangement in families, we have to understand that good intentions are not enough. I really want to underscore this point, because if you don't understand it, you're left wondering, why did things fall apart? Good intentions are not enough. Love is never enough if it doesn't feel like love to the person that's receiving it. It's like we would like to think that we get to write our own report cards for how we did as parents. But ultimately, when it's all said and done, our children write the report cards. And we might think we did a great job. But they say, I didn't feel loved. I didn't feel supported. I didn't feel all of those things. And it really hurt.
Okay, so you say that. I hear that. And here I am thinking, I'm doing everything I can, and you're telling me I'm not. But tell me now, what can I do? Tell me.
Well, oftentimes, your child has tried to tell you. And I certainly am not perfect at this either. I have 7 children, And some I've had great relationships with right along, and some we've gone through some real rocky periods. So there is no one size fits all answer. There's no perfect time, and there's times where we've struggled, especially with certain children, where communication has been difficult between us. So believe me, I understand how that can be. But what I can tell you is that if we were to go at the times when I was having the most difficulty with any of my children, and I have 2 or 3 examples in mind, I could go back and they could say, do you remember this conversation that we had this time? I tried to tell you and you didn't listen. I think we all know this from other perspectives where, we know you see somebody else and you think, you know what your problem is, and you can see it immediately because they have some personality quirk or something that they keep doing again and again. And you think you're bringing this on yourself from the way that you're acting.
Oh, sure.
We all know people like that. But if you try to tell them, they just can't hear you. You don't understand. You're being too aggressive. Every time somebody asks you a question, you're being too aggressive about it. Maybe you've had a boss like this where your boss thinks they're the greatest boss in the world, and you think, boy, they just don't get it at all. And they might even come up and they say, well, tell me, what can I do differently? Well, I can't really explain it to you because it's the whole package of how you go about things. Stop doing things the way that you do it. We all know things that are like that. Imagine a circumstance where the boss gives you a lot of extra tasks to do at work because, you're such a great employee and they're giving you the opportunity to grow. And this is going to be so good for you because you're going to be able to move up in the organization. And meanwhile, you're thinking, this isn't fair to me. Why do all the mediocre employees get a normal job load and I get, all of this stuff dropped on me? This is not fair to me. Meanwhile, the boss is thinking, what a good boss I am. Those are the kind of circumstances when we're talking about broken relationships. We're talking about really missing entirely the point. And until we're ready to really hear it, until we're ready to listen and not just defend ourselves, we're probably going to miss it.
Am I right in thinking now it's really not your fault if you don't know, if you don't understand? You want to learn, but you didn't learn. And the person on the other side who's interpreting that way, is it really their fault that they've interpreted it that way? Or is it just something that they can't control? How does that work?
That is a great question. And I would say it like this. That is a question that's essentially phrasing it in the past. And when we phrase questions in the past, it's almost always going to come down to blame somehow. And that's almost always the wrong way to phrase the question, because it's not really helpful. Once we place the blame, what do? We are much better off to take that problem from being set in the past to now being set in the future. Let's not figure out who is to blame, where the communication breakdown was, but let's instead figure out, what do we need to do going forward? How can we prevent a communication breakdown like this again in the future? What can I do now to make things right? And I think that's always going to give us much better fruits than to try to figure out who was wrong in this and what could we have done differently. There is a place for that, especially in just looking at ourselves, being introspective and thinking, what could I have done differently? But when we're talking about relationships, almost always phrasing the problem in the past tense is only going to make more difficulty. Do your best to phrase it in the future.
We started with the story of the parents that couldn't reach out. But what if you have the opportunity to reach out? If you can reach out, what can you do if you can reach out? Well, first of all, I would say you want to reach out without pressure. It has to be positive. It has to be the kind of thing that you're reaching out with love. You're showing them the kind of things that are saying, I love you, I'm here for you, and we're still family without saying those words.
The key is to make sure that they feel loved. Make sure it's about them and not about you feeling better. They say apologies without changed behavior are just manipulation.
Yes.
The idea is we want to come at this with the idea of no more apologies that are just false words. We want to show love any way that we can. Here's a great list. Some things you maybe would text them. Hey, I was thinking about you today. I wanted you to know I love you. No need to respond. Just wanted you to hear it. Send them a photo or a memory. Nothing that you need to do. No additional words or commentary necessary. Just something fun. Hey, I'm here to talk. I'm also here if you don't want to talk. Give them an update with no expectations. Something like, hey, honey, I'm just letting you know Grandma's doing well after her surgery and the dog learned a new trick. Love you.
Wow.
Something simple like that.
Yeah, that trick was pretty good. He baked bread. The dog bakes a loaf of bread.
That would be amazing.
It is a trick.
Yeah, I taught the dog to play chess.
Well, not that great.
Yeah,
He lost 2 out of 3.
Here's a great one that my friend has requested of their mom. And if the mom was really serious, she would have done this. Hey, I just wanted to let you know I'm working on myself right now. I'm going to therapy. I'm not ready to talk just yet, but I'm working through the issues right now.
Oh, yeah.
That sends a message that I really care and I'm trying really hard. How about this one? I respect that you need space right now. I'm working on being the parent that you needed, even if it feels too late. Send them something with no strings attached. The whole point is that if you're doing anything at all, that puts a responsibility or an obligation back on them. Obligation is the enemy of a relationship.
Oh, absolutely.
The moment that you are trying to use guilt to make them be in relationship with you, you've lost them. You want to get rid of all forms of guilt, all forms of manipulation, and focus on pure love. We've talked sometimes about relationships are like a bank account, that as long as you're making regular deposits, you can always make a withdrawal and there will be money there. The problem in any relationship comes when you make more withdrawals than you put in, and now all of a sudden you start bouncing checks.
And I think one of the ways you could do that is by not talking about the past, but talking about the future, looking forward, or like talking about non-conflicting things. That makes a difference too. Those kinds of things make it just the kind of things you would be talking with a neighbor about. Like, hey, let's go over to the other neighbors and steal their apples.
That's right. So there's a lot of different things that we can be doing here. It is bad to go steal the neighbor's apples, but one thing that will never steal your apples is this podcast.
Oh, of course.
And
That's just because we deliver a message of hope. We know that reconciliation is possible, but it does require patience, humility, and empathy. And that's really critical. And I'll tell you something else that I think does matter. And I throw it in here every once in a while because I think it matters and I believe in it, and that is humor. There is nothing wrong with making a little light of things when things get a little tense. Give people a chance to laugh once in a while. And it does help. It changes the mood completely. Encouragement keeps the door open, even if it's just a crack. And that matters.
Yes, it does. I want to tell a little story here from this last weekend. I was sitting across the table from a friend and I cracked some stupid joke and she just stared at me and said, "Why do I always get stuck with the people that are telling stupid jokes?" And I said, "If you think I'm bad, you should meet my dad."
Give me your phone number.
Well, we are grateful to have you coming back week after week as we strive again and again to be your voice of positivity. We hope you got some things here that can help you to improve your relationship, whether you're in the situation right now, whether you're in danger of being in this situation, or whether you know somebody like this. There's lots that we can learn and lots that we can take to improve our relationships.
And if you've got some thoughts about this, send us an email. You can send us an email at trandescendant@gmail.com. We read every one, and we look forward to hearing from you. And with that, we'll see you Monday.